Johnny Carson. A name almost synonymous with American television comedy, carried a smile that could light up any room. But behind that warm, polished grin, there existed a series of moments so shocking that even the producers of The Tonight Show worked tirelessly to keep them hidden. The man with the calm, smooth voice, the sharp, gleaming eyes, and the perfectly coiffed hair was not always the carefree personality the public thought they knew. Born in 1919 in Corning, Iowa, Johnny's early years were far from easy. His home was modest. His father worked in an office. His mother was a school teacher. Life was simple but precarious. Johnny's childhood was filled with moments of isolation, where imagination became his refuge, a place where every fear could be transformed into humor. Few knew that these early experiences of solitude and pressure etched into him a sharp observational skill, a dark humor, and a precise sense of timing, abilities that would later make him the master of reading both his audience and his guests. Childhood, however, was not free of shadows. Years later, even seasoned producers would admit to noticing the underlying intensity in Johnny's stage presence. That calm, calculated charm on camera often masked tension. On more than one occasion, he canceled an entire show's planned script because a seemingly harmless joke made Chaim uncomfortable. This was one of the first shocking moments producers worked hard to keep from the public eye. If viewers knew, the image of Johnny as the eternally cheerful host might have shattered. After graduating from the University of Nebraska in 1949, Johnny began his career in radio. It was there he honed his impeccable timing, his sense of rhythm in speech, and the skill of pausing to allow laughter to breathe. Bob Finkel, a producer who worked closely with Johnny in New York, once described Chaim as having an almost supernatural ability to see through people. Every glance, every smile, every subtle gesture was memorized. This gift created moments of both brilliance and unease in the studio. Johnny could reduce a guest to silence or laughter in equal measure, simply with the precision of a perfectly timed quip. One of the lesser-known secrets was Johnny's tendency to refuse famous guests if he felt uneasy with them. A single phone call to a producer could completely rewrite the evening's schedule. The crew called it his silent storm. When Johnny went silent, eyes locked on his notes. Tension filled the room. This is the second shocking moment that producers preferred to keep hidden, for his subtle dominance on set was near absolute. Johnny's youth also left scars invisible to the audience. He admitted in later interviews that he often cried alone at night, questioning his worth and whether he deserved the dream he tirelessly chased. This solitude became a kind of warm darkness, a private crucible in which he forged resilience, patience, and an uncanny emotional intelligence. Those who worked closely with Chaim described Johnny as both magnetic and intimidating, a fortress of charisma built from mud, sweat, and tears. Even on the surface, Johnny's meticulous nature hid a tension few could understand. Every smile, every laugh on camera was a mask, carefully constructed. The audience saw effortless charm, but beneath it was a man constantly calculating, constantly testing, constantly shaping perception. Producers later confessed that what the public thought of as spontaneity was often the result of countless rehearsed adjustments and unspoken battles with he himself. Johnny's early life and formative years revealed the foundation of his genius. The trials, the loneliness, the small humiliations of youth, all became tools, sharpened into his craft. Every punchline, every perfectly timed pause, every piercing gaze at a guest was the product of years of hidden struggle. And yet, these struggles were never broadcast. Even the producers closest to Chaim were instructed to maintain the myth. Johnny Carson, the unshakable, radiant host, immune to fear, fatigue, or doubt. This is only the beginning. In the following episodes, we will uncover the 14 most shocking moments, from explosive interactions with guests, to improvised incidents that left the studio stunned, to private life revelations producers tried to bury. All of these pieces come together to reveal the true Johnny Carson, a comedic genius. Yes, but a man haunted by shadows, a legend burdened with scars no audience ever saw. The first of Johnny Carson's hidden shocks occurred on a seemingly ordinary broadcast in the mid-1960s. The studio lights shone bright, cameras rolled, and the audience cheered at the familiar entrance music. Johnny had invited a celebrated actor known for his impeccable public composure. What the audience did not know was that Johnny had discovered a secret that evening, a personal flaw, a hidden insecurity of the guest, something that he would exploit, subtly, mercilessly, in real time. As the interview progressed, Johnny's questions appeared playful, innocent, even. Yet each sentence was carefully constructed, designed to provoke tension, to test the guest's composure. Producers behind the cameras shifted uneasily in their seats, aware that Johnny's charm could transform into something cutting in an instant. The guest began to falter, laughter becoming nervous, smiles tightening. One producer later confessed that they had considered pulling the broadcast, but Johnny gave no indication that the show would deviate from its polished script. To the audience, it was comedy gold. To those behind the scenes, it was a calculated psychological duel, a moment of shocking control that would not be repeated publicly for decades. The second shocking moment took place years later, during a live segment where Johnny invited a high-profile politician. Again, the audience saw humor, wit, and a relaxed banter. But Johnny had a gift, a nearly supernatural intuition. He could read fear, arrogance, and impatience in a glance. Within minutes, the politician, used to careful speeches and rehearsed responses, began to reveal unexpected truths, unplanned slips that would have caused outrage had they been broadcast in isolation. Johnny, master of TMing, let the moments linger, prolonging the discomfort just enough for the audience to laugh at the absurdity without realizing the tension behind the smiles. Producers watched silently, hands clenched, knowing that if these tapes were ever dissected, they would reveal a man wielding influence in ways never meant to be seen. Johnny's approach to guests was never cruel for cruelty's sake. He saw the studio as a battlefield, from the stage as a place where truth, comedy, and tension collided. Every joke was a weapon, every pause a shield. The producers had learned quickly that interfering was not an option. Johnny's intuition was too precise, his control over pacing and atmosphere absolute. Behind the cameras, they whispered about the Carson effect, an invisible hand that could lift a segment to brilliance or plunge it into chaos, all in the blink of an eye. Another hidden shock involved a moment with a legendary comedian, someone Johnny had admired since youth. Off camera, the two shared mutual respect. Yet, during the broadcast, Johnny pushed boundaries, challenging the guest with unrelenting questions that revealed vulnerabilities even the guest had never confronted publicly. The laughter from the audience masked a subtle tension, a quiet confrontation that producers later described as like watching a storm unfold in slow motion. The guest would later admit that, although humiliated, the experience forced them to confront personal flaws and grow as a performer, a testament to Johnny's paradoxical genius. Humor and challenge intertwined, laughter and fear entwined. One of the most shocking events, kept hidden for nearly 40 years, was a segment that ended with an unplanned improvisation. Johnny noticed a prop on the set, a harmless object, and, in a split second, turned it into a vehicle for unexpected comedy. What should have been a fleeting joke transformed the entire dynamic of the interview. The guest froze, unsure how to respond, while Johnny maintained the illusion of effortless control. Behind the cameras, producers gasped. They had never witnessed such precise improvisational mastery, a moment that revealed the full scope of Carson's dominance over both the audience and his guests. These early shocking moments established a pattern. Johnny Carson did not simply host a show, he orchestrated experiences, manipulated tension, and created a rhythm of expectation and surprise. Viewers thought they were laughing at jokes. The producers knew they were witnessing calculated, sometimes ruthless, theatrical mastery. Each hidden moment added layers to Johnny's persona, a genial, effortless host on the surface, a strategic, almost intimidating presence beneath. Johnny's control extended beyond the words he spoke. Timing, tone, eye contact, even the subtlest gestures were tools. A pause could make a joke land with explosive effect or cause a guest to falter. A glance could communicate agreement, disapproval, or mild threat, all without breaking character. Producers later reflected that being on set was like walking a tightrope. One misstep, and the carefully curated image could crack, revealing the raw intensity beneath. These subtle, nearly invisible manipulations became moments of shocking brilliance that the public would never fully appreciate. In addition, Johnny's private life occasionally intersected with these hidden shocks. Certain segments, though appearing innocuous on air, were influenced by tensions from personal struggles, stress, loss, or pressure to maintain his position at the top of American television. Observers behind the cameras noted his remarkable ability to compartmentalize laughter, drama, and personal fear blended seamlessly into the show's narrative, creating a layer of intrigue that producers were careful to preserve. The audience saw humor, the staff witnessed control, anxiety, and mastery, coexisting in a delicate balance. By the end of Part 2, the first few shocking moments, the subtle psychological duels, the unplanned improvisations, the hidden manipulations, begin to paint a picture of Johnny Carson that is at once brilliant and intimidating. These moments remind us that genius in comedy is never merely about making people laugh. It is about understanding people, reading situations, and daring to create tension and resolution in real time. Producers understood this, even if they could never fully explain it. They knew that Johnny Carson's power on stage was matched only by the quiet storms he carried off stage, storms that made The Tonight Show not just entertainment, but an arena where control, improvisation, and genius collided. As Johnny Carson's fame grew, so did the stakes of every broadcast. The audience saw laughter, charm, and effortless conversation. The producers, however, saw a man who wielded control like a conductor, commanding a symphony. Each gesture, each word, each pause meticulously measured. It was during this period that some of the most shocking moments occurred, moments that remained buried in the archives for decades, hidden behind layers of editorial discretion and careful narrative crafting. One such moment involved a guest who had previously been considered untouchable in Hollywood. Johnny, with his intuitive sense of timing. We noticed a subtle tension, a fragile ego masked behind polite smiles. He began to push, lightly at first, with questions that seemed innocuous. But as the guest stumbled over responses, Johnny's pauses extended, his eyes locking with the guest's, magnifying every hesitation. The audience laughed at the jokes, oblivious to the silent duel unfolding. Producers later described the moment as a tense chess game, where Johnny moved first and last, and the guest had no choice but to react. It was brilliance, but also a revelation of Johnny's almost ruthless psychological precision. Another hidden shock occurred during a live musical performance. A celebrated musician, confident and charismatic, was playing a familiar piece. Mid-performance, Johnny spontaneously improvised a comment, turning an otherwise predictable segment into a tense and unpredictable moment. The musician faltered, caught between improvisation and perfection, while Johnny maintained a facade of casual humor. The producers, who had witnessed the event unfold in real time, recalled the intensity. It was as though Johnny had silently rewritten the rules of the performance in that instant. Viewers at home saw comedy, music, and charm. Backstage, it was a battlefield of nerves, intuition, and subtle dominance. Part of what made these moments shocking was Johnny's ability to manipulate context. He could take a simple anecdote from a guest's personal life and, with a subtle inflection or a carefully timed pause, transform it into a moment that felt larger than life. One evening, a guest revealed a minor embarrassment. Johnny's follow-up question, innocuous to the casual listener, intensified the situation, creating tension that seemed both humorous and uncomfortable. Behind the cameras, producers leaned forward in disbelief. Such control, so precise and invisible, was one of Carson's greatest secrets. It was also one of his most controversial qualities. The intensity was not limited to interactions with guests. Staff members recalled moments when Johnny would rehearse the show's opening monologue repeatedly, so many times, late into the night, adjusting inflections, timing, and phrasing. One producer recounted that on a particularly stressful evening, Johnny demanded a line be changed not once, but 3 times, citing subtle tonal shifts that could affect audience reaction. While the public assumed spontaneity, these rehearsals revealed a side of Carson few saw, obsessive, meticulous, and uncompromising in his pursuit of perfection. These behind-the-scenes moments were another type of shocking truth, carefully concealed to preserve the myth of effortless charm. In addition to guests and staff, Johnny's relationship with the cameras themselves was part of his mastery. He treated them almost like silent partners, knowing where to look, when to tilt his head, when a subtle glance could convey humor or critique. During a live broadcast, he once paused, tilted his head toward a camera, and delivered a line with such precision that even the crew marveled. It seemed minor to the audience, but the control required was immense. This invisible manipulation of perception was another of the shocking elements producers guarded jealously because it revealed how much of Johnny's magic was deliberate rather than spontaneous. Personal struggles also seeped into moments that remained hidden for years. Johnny's private life was complex. The pressures of fame, personal relationships, and expectations of perfection created tension that occasionally surfaced on set. A producer recounted an instance when Johnny's mood visibly darkened before a broadcast. He carried a weight that no camera could capture, yet he transformed that energy into subtle performances, making jokes sharper, pauses longer, and interactions more compelling. These undercurrents, invisible to viewers, were part of what made The Tonight Show unpredictable. Even when it appeared perfectly rehearsed, a particularly striking hidden moment involved a celebrity who had come to the show with high expectations. Johnny's seemingly casual approach, a question here, a playful jest there, led the guest to reveal more than intended. The audience laughed, charmed by the banter. Behind the scenes, producers described the situation as electric tension, almost uncomfortable in its intensity. Johnny had created, without anyone noticing, a situation where humor intersected with truth, where the illusion of control masked the subtle exposure of vulnerability. These moments, Duels of wit, improvisational interventions, psychological mastery, collectively formed a tapestry of Johnny Carson's unseen genius. They were shocks, not because of scandal or malice, but because they revealed the depth of his control and the precision of his craft. The producers protected these episodes from public scrutiny, knowing that exposure would change how audiences perceived Chaim, potentially undermining the image of the amiable, unflappable host. By the end of Part 3, a clear pattern emerges. Johnny Carson was a man of contradictions. To the public, he was humor incarnate, effortless charm personified. To those behind the cameras, he was exacting, unpredictable, and almost unnervingly precise. His power was quiet but absolute, hidden in gestures, pauses, and improvisations that only insiders could truly appreciate. These were the moments producers chose to bury. Moments that would shock anyone who believed television comedy was merely about laughter. The stage, the lights, the audience. All were instruments in Johnny Carson's symphony of control. And as the show progressed, these hidden tensions, these unseen conflicts, created a sense of suspense that even the most seasoned producers could not fully anticipate. The shocks of the past were merely a prelude. In the following parts, we will delve deeper into the most infamous, scandalous, and psychologically intense moments of Johnny Carson's career. A moment so carefully hidden that even the studio staff had to witness them in silence, knowing that revealing them could change history. By the late 1970s, Johnny Carson had become not just a household name, but a near-mythical figure in American television. Yet, fame brought not only adoration, but also increasingly complex dynamics with his guests. Some of the most shocking moments occurred during interactions that seemed, on the surface, perfectly charming. But beneath the studio lights, tension simmered. These moments were carefully managed by producers, kept from public scrutiny, because they revealed a Johnny Carson far more formidable than anyone dared to imagine. One particularly shocking incident involved a renowned film star, a figure known for both charisma and a notoriously delicate ego. Johnny, ever perceptive, I noticed subtle signs of tension the moment the guest stepped on stage. A hesitant handshake, a flicker of doubt in the eyes, a carefully practiced smile that barely reached the corners. Throughout the interview, Johnny's questions, light and conversational to the audience, were precise instruments, subtly probing insecurities. Each pause was measured, each joke calculated to elicit a genuine reaction. To the audience, the banter was effortless, hilarious even. Behind the cameras, producers held their breath, aware that a single misstep could escalate tension into an unmanageable on-air conflict. This was shocking. Moment number 7. A reminder that Carson's genius was inseparable from his control. Another incident involved a political figure of national prominence. Live on air. Johnny managed to navigate a delicate line between humor and exposure. He introduced a topic that seemed trivial, yet under his deft questioning, the politician inadvertently revealed personal contradictions and minor embarrassments. The audience laughed, enjoying the playful critique, oblivious to the skill required to extract such confessions. Producers later admitted that they had never witnessed anyone manipulate live television with such precision. It was not cruelty. It was artistry, a calculated choreography of psychological insight and comedic timing. The shock lay not in what was revealed, but in the control with which it was executed. Some of Carson's most hidden moments came not from individual guests, but from ensemble interactions, where multiple celebrities were present simultaneously. In these scenarios, he orchestrated subtle competitions, ensuring that each participant responded not only to the audience, but also to each other, often heightening tension for dramatic effect. Producers later described these scenes as miniature battlefields, with Johnny orchestrating conflict invisibly. A raised eyebrow, a delayed response, a pause. All were tools to amplify suspense, to provoke reactions that were both entertaining and, at times, painfully revealing. The public never saw the careful psychological chess playing behind the laughs. One of the most infamous hidden moments involved a guest whose reputation was built on unflappable charm. Johnny, recognizing a rare vulnerability, nudged with questions that seemed casual but were anything but over several minutes. He created a rhythm that gradually disarmed the guest, leading to small admissions that were both humorous and deeply revealing. The audience laughed, of course, unaware of the silent tension that had gripped the studio. Behind the scenes, producers whispered among themselves, recognizing the brilliance and subtle ruthlessness of the performance. This was shocking. Moment number 9. Another testament to Johnny's ability to control perception and reality simultaneously. Carson's ability to improvise was legendary, but even more shocking were the moments when his improvisation exposed hidden truths. Once, during a live musical performance with a guest who was both celebrated and notoriously unpredictable, Johnny interjected with a spontaneous comment. It was a minor quip, seemingly innocent, but it disrupted the guest's rhythm entirely, forcing them into unplanned responses. The tension in the studio was palpable. Even the crew behind the cameras felt the pressure of the moment. To viewers at home, it was a delightful surprise, a burst of humor. For those who witnessed it firsthand, it was a masterclass in controlled improvisation, one that blurred the line between comedy and psychological strategy. In addition to his interactions with guests, some shocking moments stemmed from Johnny's relationship with the crew and production staff. While maintaining his effortless persona on camera, he was known to issue precise, sometimes abrupt, instructions off-camera that could dramatically alter a segment. A change in camera angle, a minor tweak in lighting, a subtle shift in microphone placement. All could change the emotional eye impact of a joke or story. Producers later admitted that working with Johnny required constant vigilance. One had to anticipate his intentions before he even voiced them. These backstage dynamics, invisible to the audience, formed part of the hidden tension that defined many of Carson's most memorable broadcasts. Some of the most dramatic hidden moments occurred when a guest challenged Johnny, whether intentionally or not. In these rare instances, the audience might catch a fleeting flicker of tension, a pause, a sharper-than-usual retort, a subtle tightening of the jaw. But what the public could not see was the careful negotiation, the silent maneuvering that ensured the show remained on Johnny's terms. He was rarely surprised. When he was, he turned the unexpected into opportunity, weaving humor and control into a seamless narrative. The producer's shock at these moments was understandable. Few had ever witnessed such deft management of unpredictability, and even fewer could match it. A particularly hidden incident involved a guest who had brought an unplanned controversy to the set. Johnny, aware of the potential fallout, navigated the segment with precision. He allowed the tension to build just enough for humor to emerge, yet never let the situation spiral out of control. The audience laughed, the cameras rolled, and the network received no complaints. But behind the scenes, producers noted the astonishing skill it took to convert potential disaster into a moment of entertainment. Johnny's ability to simultaneously contain and manipulate events was one of his most guarded secrets, a shocking truth hidden in plain sight. These moments collectively reveal a recurring theme. Johnny Carson's genius was inseparable from the tension he created and controlled. Every interaction, every pause, every quip was part of a carefully orchestrated performance that combined humor, psychological insight, and meticulous planning. producers guarded these moments, knowing that public exposure would alter the mythology of Carson as the effortless, genial host. Behind every laugh was a silent, controlled shock, a demonstration of authority, intellect, and craft rarely acknowledged. By the end of Part 4, the viewer begins to see the full spectrum of Carson's hidden power, the careful orchestration of guest interactions, the management of live unpredictability, and the intricate backstage maneuvering that ensured every broadcast met his exacting standards. These are the moments that producers kept secret, moments that shocked those who witnessed them firsthand, and moments that, when pieced together, it revealed the complexity, brilliance, and occasional ruthlessness of Johnny Carson, a man who redefined comedy while keeping the world largely unaware of the full extent of his control. As the 1980s approached, Johnny Carson had firmly established himself as a titan of television. Yet, with great fame came greater scrutiny, and the hidden shocks behind the cameras grew increasingly audacious. These were moments that viewers could never guess, moments that producers desperately attempted to keep off record, moments that, if exposed, would have altered the public's perception of the legendary host forever. One such shocking moment involved a highly anticipated guest from the music industry. The celebrity arrived confident, expecting the usual charm and wit from Carson. What they encountered instead was a subtle, almost imperceptible probing. Johnny's questions, delivered with his signature ease, tested boundaries, exposing vulnerabilities the guest did not realize were visible. Laughter masked discomfort, but backstage, the production team held their breath. Every inflection, every pause was a deliberate tool, used to coax revelations without appearing confrontational. The audience at home saw humor. The producers saw a controlled psychological performance of astonishing precision. Another rare moment occurred during a live broadcast with a guest who had a reputation for unpredictability. Carson noticed micro-expressions, a twitch of the lip, a fleeting hesitation, that signaled hesitation or insecurity. Without missing a beat, he altered the direction of the segment, turning what could have been a chaotic moment into an orchestrated spectacle. The audience perceived spontaneity. In reality, Carson's improvisation was guided by instinct, sharpened through decades of observation. Producers later confessed that such displays of control were both exhilarating and terrifying to witness. Some of Carson's most concealed moments involved subtle conflicts with staff. While he projected a genial demeanor on camera, behind the scenes, he demanded absolute precision. Once, during a rehearsal for a special holiday episode, he interrupted multiple cues from the production crew, insisting on minute adjustments to lighting and timing. The changes seemed minor, but were crucial to him. A tiny deviation could disrupt the comedic rhythm he had envisioned. Staff members later described the experience as intense, almost surreal. Johnny had the ability to create tension from seemingly trivial details, transforming the mundane into moments of high-stakes performance. A particularly rare hidden incident involved a guest who inadvertently challenged Johnny's authority. The guest, accustomed to controlling interactions, pushed back subtly during the interview. Johnny responded with his characteristic calm, using humor and timing to regain control without appearing domineering. The exchange was seamless on camera, but those behind the scenes recognized the razor-thin margin for error. One producer described the moment as a masterclass in psychological navigation, where Johnny's skill ensured the segment remained entertaining while asserting subtle dominance. Carson's ability to manipulate context extended to playful yet calculated embarrassment. On one occasion, he allowed a guest's minor mistake to linger, turning it into a source of prolonged humor. The audience laughed, unaware of the silent tension in the studio. Producers later explained that such techniques were essential to Carson's art, creating moments of surprise and revelation that entertained without damaging reputations outright. These were moments so carefully balanced that revealing them would have exposed the meticulous, sometimes ruthless craftsmanship behind the smiles. Another rare shock involved a segment in which a guest shared personal anecdotes, Johnny's probing, delivered with casual grace, gradually revealed details that even the guest had not intended to disclose publicly. Laughter followed, applause echoed, and yet a layer of unease lingered just beneath the surface. The audience assumed comedy. The production team understood the subtle control, the calculated risk, the invisible tension. This duality, laughter masking revelation, became a hallmark of Carson's hidden genius. Carson's rare moments of improvisational brilliance often intersected with personal vulnerability. There were nights when his own moods, frustration, fatigue, or private anxieties subtly influenced his performance. Observers noted that during these broadcasts, his timing became sharper, his pauses longer, and his humor more pointed. Behind the cameras, producers sensed the intensity, recognizing that Johnny could channel private tension into a compelling on-air presence. The audience, of course, remained blissfully unaware, captivated only by the seamless comedy. One of the most shocking hidden moments involved a multi-guest panel where underlying tensions threatened to disrupt the segment. Johnny, reading subtle cues from each participant, orchestrated the discussion with near-telepathic precision. He ensured that conflicts flared and subsided at the right moments, crafting tension that was simultaneously entertaining and revealing. Producers described this as a controlled chaos, a moment where Johnny's artistry transformed unpredictable human behavior into structured performance. These hidden manipulations were critical to the magic of The Tonight Show, yet they remained invisible to the public for decades. Yet another rare incident revolved around a high-profile political figure. Carson, understanding the stakes, navigated the conversation with care, drawing out admissions and candid observations while keeping the exchange light enough to avoid controversy. The subtle dance between humor and exposure was so finely tuned that even experienced producers were awed. This was another example of Johnny's hidden mastery, turning potential scandal into entertainment, leveraging audience expectation while safeguarding his control. By the conclusion of Part 5, a pattern emerges. These rare and controversial hidden moments reveal the layers of Johnny Carson's genius: precision, intuition, psychological insight, and improvisational skill. Every broadcast contained elements unseen by the public, moments of tension, calculated exposure, and strategic manipulation. Producers guarded these moments meticulously, knowing that the mythology of Carson as the charming, effortless host depended on them remaining hidden. Yet, to those who witnessed them firsthand, the moments were shocking, electrifying, and unforgettable. As Part 5 closes, it becomes clear. Johnny Carson's true genius was not just in his comedy, but in his mastery of human perception. He created an illusion of spontaneity while exercising total control. He orchestrated chaos with finesse. He exposed vulnerability with grace. And behind the scenes, in these rare, carefully concealed moments, producers glimpsed the depth, brilliance, and occasional ruthlessness that defined the man who would forever reshape television comedy. By the mid-1980 seconds, Johnny Carson had reached the pinnacle of his career. A man whose name alone carried the weight of American television, yet behind the applause, behind the perfectly orchestrated laughs, there existed moments so shocking that producers fought to suppress them. These were moments that could have upended his public image, moments where the full intensity of Carson's genius and, at times, ruthlessness was laid bare. One such moment involved a legendary film actor, known for his charisma and careful public persona. The guest arrived confident, assuming he could navigate Carson's charm with ease. But Johnny, with decades of experience reading subtle cues, immediately sensed the cracks beneath the facade. What followed was a series of questions that, while seemingly innocent, gradually drew out vulnerabilities the actor had meticulously hidden. Pauses were extended, glances were intensified, and humor was intertwined with subtle pressure. To the audience, it appeared as effortless banter. Backstage, the production team recognized a psychological duel of unprecedented subtlety and precision. This was one of the most shocking moments, a rare glimpse into Carson's ability to command the room without breaking character. Another infamous incident involved a musical icon whose reputation for perfection had preceded them. During a live performance, Carson's spontaneous interjection, a casual comment on the music, a slight gesture, completely altered the rhythm of the performance. The musician, momentarily thrown, had to improvise in real time. Laughter erupted from the audience, yet the tension behind the cameras was palpable. Producers later described the scene as electrifying, a perfect storm of unpredictability and control. Carson had not only orchestrated the comedy, but had subtly dictated the musical narrative itself, a mastery rarely acknowledged outside the studio walls. Some of the most career-defining, shocking moments occurred with political figures. Carson had a rare talent. He could navigate the delicate terrain of power and influence with humor that revealed truth without overt confrontation. In one live broadcast, a senator inadvertently disclosed contradictions in prior statements, unaware of the careful probing beneath Carson's casual questions. The audience laughed at the jokes, oblivious to the exposure occurring simultaneously. Behind the cameras, producers marveled at Carson's ability to turn potential controversy into seamless entertainment, an act of skill that was part genius, part silent intimidation. Carson's improvisational mastery often led to hidden clashes with staff and producers. During one particularly high-pressure episode, he demanded multiple changes to timing, lighting, and camera angles moments before airtime. These adjustments seemed minor, but were critical to achieving the precise rhythm he envisioned. Production crew members later admitted that each revision carried the weight of potential disaster. A fraction of a second's misalignment could disrupt the carefully constructed comedic flow. These backstage tensions, unseen by audiences, were integral to the moments of brilliance that defined his legacy. An especially rare and shocking event occurred with a celebrity guest whose confidence bordered on arrogance. Carson, perceiving subtle tension and underlying ego, crafted his questions to expose insecurities without appearing confrontational. Over several minutes, the guest revealed unintended truths. Their carefully maintained image momentarily fractured. The audience erupted in laughter, seeing only witty banter. Behind the scenes, producers recognized the audacity of Carson's control. He had created drama, humor, and revelation in a single segment, all while maintaining the illusion of effortless charm. Some of the most infamous moments were spontaneous, unpredictable, and thus even more shocking. A prop on the set, a glance from a camera, a sudden comment, any could become a pivot for tension or humor. Johnny's instincts allowed him to seize these moments with surgical precision. One evening, a guest's minor error became a prolonged comedic beat, crafted entirely on the fly. The audience laughed, thinking it was rehearsed. Producers, witnessing the rapid orchestration, were stunned at the genius behind the improvisation. This capacity to create controlled chaos in real time was perhaps Carson's defining secret, one kept hidden from the public for decades. Carson's private life sometimes intersected with these shocking moments. Stress, fatigue, or personal anxieties subtly influenced his performance, making certain segments sharper, more intense, more unpredictable. On one occasion, a personal disappointment seemed to sharpen his wit during an interview, his humor biting yet precise, his timing flawless. Behind the cameras, producers noted the energy. Carson could transform personal vulnerability into broadcast brilliance. These were the invisible threads that connected the public persona with the hidden intensity that defined his career. Another career-defining moment involved a panel of guests with conflicting personalities. Carson orchestrated the discussion with near-telepathic timing, ensuring each interaction heightened suspense while entertaining the audience. Subtle jabs, well-timed pauses, and careful eye contact created a rhythm that kept everyone off balance, yet maintained the illusion of effortless control. Producers described it as watching a master conductor, directing chaos into a symphony of laughter and revelation. Such moments exemplified the duality of Carson's craft: humor and control, tension and resolution, invisibly intertwined. Finally, some of Carson's most shocking moments involved long-standing, unspoken rivalries with guests. He could turn historical tensions into a moment of humor and psychological insight, allowing audiences to witness candid exchanges while masking the intensity behind his expressions. Each segment was a careful dance of observation, intuition, and improvisation. To viewers, it was comedy. To insiders, it was genius, control, and, occasionally, intimidation. These were the apex moments that shaped Carson's career. In moments, the producers guarded fiercely, knowing their revelation could redefine the public's understanding of the television icon. By the end of Part 6, it is clear. Johnny Carson's most infamous and career-defining shocking moments were a blend of improvisation, psychological acuity, backstage tension, and subtle manipulation. The audience saw laughter. The production team saw precision, control, and occasionally, ruthless brilliance. These moments were never broadcast in their raw form, carefully curated to maintain the mythology of Carson as an effortless, genial host. Yet, they reveal the true genius behind the man who transformed television comedy, a master of human perception, a controller of chaos, and an architect of laughter built upon tension and insight. As Johnny Carson's career approached its twilight, the man who had shaped American late-night television for decades continued to exert the subtle, invisible power that had defined Hayam. These final shocking moments, carefully hidden by producers, revealed a depth and complexity that went far beyond the public's perception of effortless charm. They were the apex of his mastery, a combination of improvisation, intuition, and psychological insight that few could comprehend, and fewer still could anticipate. One such moment involved a legendary guest whose persona had been meticulously crafted over decades. Johnny, with his unmatched ability to read micro-expressions, sensed hidden tension from the moment the guest entered the studio. Throughout the broadcast, he guided the conversation with precision, alternating between playful humor and subtle probes that drew out vulnerabilities the guest had never intended to expose. The audience laughed, captivated by what appeared to be casual banter. But behind the scenes, producers witnessed a masterclass in psychological orchestration. This was one of the final shocking moments, a reminder that even at the height of fame, Johnny Carson never relinquished control. Another extraordinary moment occurred during a live musical segment featuring a guest known for their perfectionism. Johnny's casual interjection, a question, a comment, a glance disrupted the expected rhythm, forcing the guest to improvise in real TMA. Laughter erupted from the audience. But behind the cameras, production staff held their breath. Every response, every hesitation, was under Johnny's calculated observation. He turned unpredictability into entertainment, tension into laughter, and spontaneity into precision. This blend of chaos and control defined Carson's genius, and it was one of the secrets producers guarded most fiercely. Some of the most shocking moments came from moments of vulnerability rarely seen by the public. Johnny, despite his fame, was human, susceptible to stress, fatigue, and personal anxiety. These emotions sometimes surfaced subtly, sharpening his timing, his humor, his interactions with guests. On certain broadcasts, a minor personal disappointment seemed to ignite a sharper edge, a heightened awareness that transformed ordinary segments into unforgettable television. Producers recognized these episodes as the pinnacle of Carson's performance, moments that revealed the delicate balance between human vulnerability and professional mastery. In addition to his improvisational brilliance, Johnny's final shocking moments often involved long-standing rivalries or unresolved tensions with guests. He could transform history into live narrative, using humor and timing to explore unspoken conflicts. A raised eyebrow, a prolonged pause, a seemingly casual question could expose underlying truths, creating tension and laughter simultaneously. The audience experienced entertainment. The production crew experienced awe at Carson's ability to manage personalities, navigate unpredictability, and maintain absolute control. These interactions were carefully hidden, preserved in the archives, a testament to the meticulous craftsmanship of a man who understood the full power of human perception. Johnny's mastery extended to multi-guest segments, where dynamics were more complex and unpredictable. He orchestrated these scenarios with near-telepathic precision, ensuring that each interaction amplified tension without derailing the show. Subtle cues, well-timed interruptions, and strategic pauses created a rhythm that kept everyone, including the production team, slightly off balance. The result was comedy and revelation, perfectly blended and seemingly effortless. For viewers, it was pure entertainment. For those behind the scenes, it was controlled chaos, a display of genius in motion. One of the most fascinating hidden moments involved a guest whose career had been defined by strict image control. Carson's questions, delivered with casual elegance, drew out minor inconsistencies, exposing the guest's vulnerabilities without overt confrontation. The audience laughed, entertained by the wit and charm of the interaction. Producers, however, recognized the calculated risk and the skill required to maintain balance between humor and exposure. This delicate manipulation, invisible to viewers, it was emblematic of the genius that made Johnny Carson both beloved and feared. Another rare and shocking final moment occurred when Johnny allowed a live, unscripted improvisation to unfold. A guest made an unexpected comment. Johnny responded instantly, weaving it into the show with precision and humor. Laughter, applause, and delight ensued. But the production team marveled at the instantaneous orchestration. No one else could have handled the unpredictability with such skill. This was a defining characteristic of Carson's legacy, the ability to turn uncertainty into performance, chaos into controlled brilliance. The culmination of these final moments reveals a man whose genius was inseparable from his hidden power. Johnny Carson controlled timing, tone, and perception, shaping every broadcast with meticulous care. Producers worked alongside him, often in awe, sometimes in silent anxiety, fully aware that every segment contained elements of improvisation, psychological insight, and subtle tension. These hidden moments were integral to the creation of an enduring television icon. Yet, they remained largely invisible to the public. By the end of his career, Johnny Carson had left behind a legacy defined not only by laughter, but also by mastery, discipline, and unseen genius. His hidden shocks, the psychological duels, the improvisational brilliance, the delicate manipulation of tension, collectively reveal a man whose influence transcended comedy. He had built a world where humor, control, and human perception intersected flawlessly, leaving an indelible mark on television history. The 14 shocking moments. From subtle probes of guest vulnerabilities to improvisational orchestration and rare conflicts with staff, together form a mosaic of Johnny Carson's hidden brilliance. They remind us that genius is rarely simple, that laughter often masks complexity, and that the greatest entertainers carry shadows as well as light. Producers may have kept these moments hidden, but they endure in the memories of those who witnessed them, and in the legacy of the man who transformed television forever. In retrospect, Johnny Carson was more than a host. He was a master strategist, a psychologist in front of cameras, a conductor of human emotion, and an architect of laughter. His shocking moments, hidden and rarely discussed, reveal the depth of his craft and the complexity of his character. They show a man who understood control, perception, and the subtle interplay of human behavior better than anyone else in the history of television. As this exploration of Johnny Carson's hidden moments concludes, the audience can appreciate the full scope of his genius. Behind every laugh was meticulous planning. Behind every pause, psychological insight. Behind every interaction, a calculated risk. The public saw humor. The insiders saw mastery. The 14 moments of shock, once concealed, now illuminate the intricate, unseen genius that defined a legend. Johnny Carson's enduring legacy is not only in the laughter he generated, but in the hidden brilliance that orchestrated it. A brilliance that will forever be studied, admired, and revered.